All right,
We good?
we should be okay now.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Well, hey, Michael.
Morning.
Hi. Good morning, everyone. It's January 12th, 2024, and this is the monthly meeting of the Facilities and Operations Western Board of Education Committee meeting. We're going to move things around a little bit because, Mike, I understand you have a time constraint.
Yeah, appreciate that, Steve.
And we're going to go into Mike Del Mastro's piece quickly because there's not much of an update. And then we're going to move to number 4, which is a discussion of expiring contracts. And that includes buses. And so I thought, Michael, you want to be part of that. So we have a quorum. And so, Michael, Del Mastro, do you want to go ahead?
Sure. Yeah, so like I said, it's been a really quiet month, knock on wood. Just plugging along with typical repairs. We have one thing that we had happen this month was we had the walkthrough for the playground for the North House. The bids were in last week. We haven't awarded anything. We met with the playground committee. So now we're just looking for a little bit more of a detailed I guess instruction what they're going to provide us. It was more of an animated picture, so we're going to look at some more specifics and then probably make a decision within the next couple of weeks to move forward and how we're going to move forward. Just really been this last month, just really been working on capital. Trying to firm up some pricing, get more contractors in, which is trying, but I think we've made some really good headway, and that's really it. It's been nice.
Can I just ask a question about the tennis courts?
Sure.
Because they're a constant problem given where they're located.
Yeah.
When do you think the next time they're going to have to be addressed?
It seems to be like it goes every 2 to 3 years.
So relatively quickly.
Yeah, because it really depends on the winter. Depends
Yeah.
how cold it is, how much the earth moves. But I'll try to get up there in the next day or two, or I'll get up there today because I know we have a long weekend
No,
coming.
it all has to do with the town building pickleball courts. And, and instead of, I mean, if we're going to do something correctly, we should at some point, Lisa's shaking her head, we've had this conversation.
Yeah.
Think about, creating, for lack of a better term, a racket center, pickleball courts and tennis courts, because we keep spending, and it's not inexpensive to resurface those courts.
No.
And it every 2 or 3 years is probably 5 years or 6 years too early versus if they were in a more stable environment. So, all right, that's all I need to know.
Yeah, I mean, just to add, it's so swampy back there because it's near the wetlands. Remember when we took the latest golf trip back there? I remember that path. We used to walk to the football field years ago. It used to be back there. It's a nightmare. Just waste of money to constantly be refurbishing it. All right.
Yeah. Okay.
So if I'm understanding this correctly, really quickly, basically they shouldn't be there, but the town's sort of discussion around the pickleball courts is delaying us from instituting anything. Okay.
No. It's the courts are in the wetlands.
Right.
The town's going to build pickleball courts. The athletic director had the correct ideas of maybe the tennis court should be moved to that open field near the central office,
right?
And you create a facility in a stable environment.
Got it. Okay.
The other thing is if you create tennis courts and you have nets to make them into pickleball courts, then they're multi-purpose. You create a pickleball court and it's only for pickleball. So it's a little bit frustrating.
Anyway, let's not belabor that here.
All right.
Thanks, Mike. Let's move on to expiring contracts because that includes buses. And what we need everyone to understand, and I had this conversation with Phil, is the laws of the state of Connecticut require a seat for every kid, whether they use the bus or not. Right. So we have seats for every child. And as you can tell, when you pull up in front of any school, parents, especially in the elementary school, drive their kids to school, right? Except there's a seat on the bus and they're not being utilized. And then the other thing, and I say this only because I was on the board of directors of the Second Orbit School Bus Company. It's a very difficult business in terms of attracting drivers nationwide. It's not, and it's particularly difficult in this environment. So that all, and this is all the discussion we had yesterday, Michael, and they're effectively, and Phil is going to join in a second. I think there are effectively 3 school bus companies. There's First Student, there's DATCO, and I think there's STA. So it's not like you put the bid out and a gazillion people bid for it. But Phil, why don't you just take us through the school bus contract and just what's going on because of difficulties of getting drivers and
It's so as I mentioned, our contract extension with First Student is going to end at the end of this school year, June 24. I think based on what I'm seeing, I did reach out to First Student just to kind of get a sense in terms of if we were to do an extension, what are we looking at in terms of an increase? So just to give some backstory, for the past 2 years, our contracted increase has been about 6.5%. Their response was, "Hey, you're looking at a double-digit increase for the first year." Which is pretty significant which is going to be significant. But I do want to point out that what I'm seeing or what I'm hearing just across other school districts in Lower Fairfield County is that they're seeing similar increases as well. So, to Steve's points, we don't have a lot of players. There's really 3 major players in the transportation business. And I just wanted for us to have a discussion in terms of what the appetite is. One, either to do an extension or do we go out to bid? One thought is and I'm not quite sure how First Student will, if they're open to this, is to extend for 1 year, because tied into this as well is there a long-term plan of, what are we going to do what we need to do in terms of electrifying our buses for the future years and what that will mean for the town and everything else. So I just wanted to have a discussion with our group in terms of where we are, how we're feeling.
I assume extending for 1 year would be even more expensive.
It could be. In terms of the contract from their obligations to their drivers, they're looking at about a 5% increase in terms of salary.
Well, first of all, we need to have this conversation with the Board of Finance because of their new purchasing policies that they put together this past summer. And if we do think that it's right to extend it a year, I'm not suggesting we do or we don't, we need to let them know that because they will tell us they would want us to go out to bid.
Yeah, Steve, and I just want to point out that the Board of Education, we have our own purchasing policy, the policy that the town just instituted. Yeah. Right. I know it kind of goes both ways because we ultimately do need the ultimate blessing of the Board of Finance, but we typically follow we do have the right within our purchasing policy to extend, like we can.
I'm not suggesting we don't.
Okay.
I just know that they will then question it. And so rather than putting ourselves in a position of being questioned, I'd rather have that conversation, if we think that's the right thing to do, with the Board of Finance ahead of time and give them the reasons why.
Yeah. So I just First Student just reached out to me, and they do want to have a follow-up meeting next week Tuesday, I can have the conversation to see what they're looking at in terms if there's any change to their increase. And then if we're going to, either way, whether we decide to extend our contract or to do an RFP, we do need to have that discussion with the Board of Finance sooner rather than later. Because if we ultimately do end up changing companies, it's going to be it's a transition, and it's going to be a significant transition which needs to be carefully managed. First Student has been in district now for several years. I don't think they've been in district, I think, since the early 90s.
Yeah.
We no longer have a transportation director or coordinator, and they've pretty much taken ownership of that entire thing in terms of routing, correspondence with families and stuff like that. So there's been significant improvements. The struggle, as Steve mentioned, really has to do with the driver, which is really not a First Student issue. It's really a nationwide constraint that currently exists. I think across the board, especially in Connecticut, coming from COVID, all bus companies pretty much increased the salaries or the hourly rate for all the drivers significantly. And I think that is also one of the reasons why we're seeing such a large increase. So we're seeing the increases for the drivers, and we're also seeing increases, not that it affects us directly immediately in terms of the cost of the buses themselves. In some instances, the cost of the buses, the diesel buses, have pretty much doubled to what they've been based on their historical rate. When we ultimately decide to go to electrify the buses, that cost is going to be significantly more as well. So we just want to, again, it's just an open discussion. Just so we know where we are.
It sounds like, Phil, just really quickly, it sounds like there are a couple of things we're trying to solve for here. And one of those things, sort of in my mind, just maybe cannot be solved for if we switch companies, which is this perpetual sort of, constraint with respect to bus drivers, right? And so the parents, and look, I'm one of them. I said this the other day, and my wife is as well. We get these like notices like every morning, right? And other parents do, and then it basically whips up, right? All the parents are like, oh my God, another bus drivers are, there's volatility in the bus drivers. It sounds like whether we're with First Student or DATCO or whomever, that necessarily cannot be solved for, right? It's not like one company is going to have a better supply of drivers than another. So, okay. So we'll have to sort of deal with that sort of in another way, like alternatively. I just don't know how you solve for that, frankly. So then this becomes it's a cost issue. And then of course, to Steve's point, there are constraints, or at least rules that have policies that have been put in the town, Board of Finance, et cetera, around what we're going, what we have the ability to do next. So if we extend it for 1 year, I guess there are three options here. And Steve and anyone else, look, I don't really know. Okay. But three options in my mind: either we extend for them with them for 1 year, it gives us optionality, right? But there's a cost to that, because I would imagine they're going to bang us for a higher increase than they would have if we did some multi-year contract with them. Second is to do a multi-year contract with them. And then the third is to just put this out to bid. Is that framing that? Steve, you've been through this, and Peter, you guys have been through this a ton. Is that how you see it? And sort of, what are your concerns, or comments on each one of those scenarios?
Peter, you want to? I mean, those are the scenarios, right?
And how do we make that decision between the three, Steve?
Well, I'm going to kind of come back to Phil, and
Okay.
You know the lay of the land of what's going on. I mean, you told me that Westport just changed from DATCO to First Student.
Yeah, it's change is never easy, and it comes with its own set of challenges, right? So in terms of what do I recommend from a cost perspective?
So when you talk to your counterpart in Westport, as an example,
Yes.
So they went through the drill of First Student, DATCO, First Student. Seems to, it seems to really bounce around those two companies in Fairfield County.
Yes.
And so, and I don't know if you've had this conversation, but when you talk to your counterpart in Westport, is there a reason they move from one to another? Or you might not know, but maybe that would be helpful.
I think each bus company has its own set of challenges, right? So I don't necessarily want to discuss a lot about the other district, but
Yeah.
I think with each school, with each bus company, they're going to have their own sets of challenges, and they may have experienced some challenges with the previous provider. So listen, at the end of the day, what do we expect? I think regardless of whether we do an RFP or if we extend the contract, we're going to see a double-digit increase. I think it's just a given. So with our CASBO, which is the business manager group, everyone who decided to do an RFP, they got a double-digit increase. So I do not think that we're going to see anything less than that. If someone comes in less than that, I think we should have some question as to what exactly are they going to do, to get the cost as low as it is. So listen, we can have another discussion because we still have some time, right? Let me have a conversation with with First Student next week to see what they're proposing in terms, if there's any wiggle room in terms of the increase, and then let's have a follow-up conversation at our meeting in February.
Okay.
Right. I mean, I think for right now, in terms of the budget for next year, I factored in a 6.5% increase. If we are going to see, if you see anything double digit, it's going to add at least $100,000 to the budget for next year. So I think right now the increase was about in district about 120, give or take. So we're looking at an additional $120,000 to the existing budget, which is, of course, is going to increase the budget. So let me have the conversation, and then I'll report back to the board or to the committee next month.
Phil, is there a way for you to just lay that out too for us so we can see it ahead of time, like scenario 1, 2, 3?
Sure.
And then maybe just some considerations as we think and discuss it, because again, first time going through the process here. I guess my last question on this is, what is the typical length of the contract usually that we've had with these bus companies?
Most of our contracts tend to be 5 years.
They're 5 years. Okay.
Yeah, Michael, most definitely. Once we can lay this out. Again, I didn't lay anything out because I just wanted to have a discussion.
Yeah, no, I get it. Thanks.
I was just going to make one last comment, if I could. Yeah, so this particular committee meeting is focused on the fleet and the contract appropriately. Then Michael brought up the vagaries. How does that affect kids? And that's a different discussion. It's not really for this committee meeting at this time, but it may be a discussion we need to have at the budget discussion. And one is, how do we deal with the vagaries, right? Are parents and kids suffering by elongated routes, changing buses every day? I don't have a pulse on that, right? I don't really know how big a challenge or difficulty that is, but we may have to come up with some solutions that are a little creative to work around the vagaries of First Student or DATCO, whoever we choose, right? And I remember doing this a couple of years ago in a Board of Ed meeting because of some of the athletics, and it's hard to have a good solution. I mean, the expensive solution is to have like gap filling school vans, right? When one buses can't go, you have a smaller van, a smaller cohort, and a driver dedicated to that to fill a route, right? So the kids aren't on the bus for an hour and a half. But that's not a discussion for today. That's a discussion as part of if we even want to look at that solution for next year. But there's two different discussions: the fleet and the contract, and the vagaries and the inconvenience or the difficulties of dealing with the vagaries of any bus company.
And there is a cost to the transition as well.
Right.
Because there will be obviously disruption there as well. So, if you're looking at all else being equal cost wise, of course, then, you would probably step the decision and go with whoever you're with currently and try to avoid the disruption unless there's, such compelling evidence to move. So anyway.
Well said. And as we just talk about the disruption, the good news is that we're not seeing a system-wide disruption, right? I think it's really limited to maybe 2 or so rounds. I know one of the buses, we do have a driver that she was on extended vacation, and she will be back within a week or two, and then we'll see some improvement in the near term, and then we'll figure the rest of it out. So where we are right now, I'll report back to the group at our next meeting in February. I think it's prudent for us to make an adjustment to the budget for transportation. If it so happens that by the time we get to April, when we get a result, either way, a decision, we can adjust that number. But I do think I recommend that we do make an adjustment to the transportation budget.
Okay.
And just add a couple things real quick that I want to highlight, kind of some qualitative background information that I do think is important. Phil and I work very closely with these drivers. We want them to feel a part of things, from taking photos. They have all pictures over there that I take going around. We also, in ways to keep them here, find other ways to use them. We have bus drivers that are cafeteria aides, playground aides, because they're here in the morning, then they come back in the afternoon. Hey, we ask them, would you like to do this for us? And they do it. I can give you an example, and we explained it, but about this, like these travel drivers and how they have a different contract. I equate it with a travel nurse. One of the drivers was moved. And he worked in the cafeteria at the high school in between. And I went to the cafeteria. I said, "You're not leaving us." He goes, "Well, I was thinking about it," because he had to go to Westport. I said, "Please, you have to stay. Come up, keep working for us." And he's still there. I mean, we really try to develop a relationship with these drivers every way we can. I mean, I would bet our knowing the names of our drivers against any other district. But it is a challenge because of where we're located. As well, to try to make it as appealing as possible. Because if we can get them here and give them other opportunities within the district, then we have a really good chance of keeping them here. All right, just wanted to add that.
Okay.
Helpful.
I would like to discuss one other expiring contract, and I know, Michael, you have a time constraint. We do have our cleaning contract is also ends at the end of this fiscal year. I had a discussion with the company, and they're proposing for a 3-year extension with a 4.5% increase for all 3 years. I would recommend that we do extend this contract. It has taken us, to be told, it has taken us a while for us to get to a place where we're happy with the service, and there's been just several challenges. Similar to our bus drivers, they've had some challenges as well with staff and with turnover on their part. And I think we're just seeing that just across the board with just everything. I think we're at a good place, and we have established a good working relationship. And I do want to recommend that we extend the contract for 3 more years, if I do get the blessing from the committee and ultimately the board.
What's the company? Sorry.
It's a Finico.
What I don't have my budget in front of me. What's the cost of cleaning?
The cost of cleaning is about 600 and change. One quick second.
Yeah.
And Phil, as you look that up, that's a 4.5% annual increase for all 3 years, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Just to give you an idea, the increase for this past fiscal year was 6%. The cleaning contract all in is just over $1 million.
That's what I thought.
Mm-hmm.
And if you put it out for bid, how many people bid?
To ask that question, I'm not quite sure how many players we have. There isn't a lot of major players out there at this time. The problem that we have, right? So everyone is going to have the same issues finding workers.
Yeah.
that's ultimately going to be the challenge. We see this in every area. We see the same thing, even with our food service, right? It's a struggle to find people to work, and yeah, it's just been a struggle.
And are they unionized?
They are unionized.
That too, right? So we had that issue before a number of years ago, right?
Correct.
I think preceding you, Phil, there was an issue with
Yes.
Yeah.
They came to a meeting in shirts.
Yeah.
It's like a protest. I thought they were there because there was a cake to celebrate something. And I'm talking away to them, and then I'm like, oh, they're making a point.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm not adverse to that, but again, we do need to give the Board of Finance a heads up that there's a reason that, if we make the decision that we're going to go do that.
Yeah, and just to put some flavor into this, I mean, the minimum wage has increased. I mean, I think over 7%. In recent years. So if you factor in, the cost of increase for minimum wage, which I think went up again this year, and it's set to go up again in October, right? In addition to where we are with inflation, I think a 4.5% is kind of maybe a little bit in line with the CPI, maybe a little bit below CPI.
Well, it's pretty much in line with the contracts that we negotiated for the town, for the teachers and for others.
Correct.
Yeah, so it's not out of line with that.
That's correct.
And that includes our own cleaning staff,
Correct.
our own janitors.
Yes,
Right?
yes. Yeah.
All right. Just before Michael goes, what about our food service contract? What's going on there?
The food service contract also ends this year. We're not. I'll have a discussion about that if we could at the next meeting.
Okay.
I kind of wanted to focus on these two items just because they have a direct impact on our operating budget.
But how big a contract is that? Again,
It's not as significant in terms of the management cost.
okay. But I do think since all of these contracts are coming due in this current fiscal year, that we address all of them. And again, make sure that we're in line with, let the Board of Finance know that we're discussing it and we're going to come back to them. And if we decide extend the cleaning contract, 1-year extension in the bus contract, whatever we decide to do with the food service contract, which my guess is we'll probably want to do an RFP for that, but we'll see. So I don't want this to become part of our overall. I want the Board of Finance to focus on our budget, not just pieces of it because we didn't tell them or, what's going on with what's going to be. It's a relatively significant part of the overall discretionary budget.
Correct. And again, as I said, Steve, so the reason why I don't want to focus immediately on the food services because it's separate and it's pretty much, it's pretty much a self-sufficient operation. But we'll have that discussion because if we do an RFP, it probably will be before March. So we'll have a discussion next month.
Okay.
Phil, one last question on this. Just general question on the contracts. When we come up on a contract renewal year, or I should say a contract expiration year, is there any sort of write-up that you provide that's, look, I don't want to create more work, but is there any write-up that you provide that says, okay, this is where we are, this is what's being proposed, this is my recommendation, to just sort of memorialize where we are and what's going on? Okay, good.
Yeah. So once we get to the point where an ultimate decision is made, I'll do a write-up,
Okay.
and then I'll submit it. Yeah.
All right, that would be helpful. Okay, great.
Okay. Is that it for this segment?
It is.
Okay. Thanks. So why don't we move on to your report? I think that's the next.
Sure. Michael, how much time do you have?
I have to jump in like a minute. I looked at your report just really quickly. My comments on that were, and maybe I'll email these to you too, Phil, and I'll CC everyone. But Let me see. I like the fact that you provided a bridge, basically from the adopted budget to the projected spend. I thought that was helpful. I didn't see that last meeting. I saw it this meeting. That was great. Let me see. The sped transportation savings is $75K. That was interesting. I didn't really, further explanation on that. And then on the benefits side, $254,000 in savings for the full year. I guess why did we sort of account for that in December? I didn't see that sort of in the prior month. Just wondering on process there. Jumping around, sorry guys. Last question, Phil, was let's see, in that surplus sort of bridge that you provided, that breakdown, I guess the question is, two questions there. Are these all largely, one-time items, I guess, for the year? And then has your position changed as to whether or not, as to the unfavorable items coming our way that would still lead us to a balanced budget, or are we expecting a surplus? So I think those are sorry, I threw all that out at you. I have to jump in a minute, but those are
all right. Real quick, in terms of the surplus definitely, my position has changed. I do believe that we'll have a surplus. In terms of the benefits, we could not have planned, in terms of the CMERS, which is the pension portion of that, we could not have planned because we planned one thing in March, and then we got updated information in June, so we could not have planned on the pension side. As it relates on the benefit portion of it for health insurance, we planned to have more people enrolled in our health insurance plan, and we have less. And those are the major drivers for the benefit section.
Okay.
And then real quick on SPED transportation, the reason why that shifted, anything within SPED will shift one way or another. What happened with this one, we had a change in the placement for a student, and who pretty much no longer needs transportation. And there was no way to anticipate that.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, great. Anything else, Steve, that you need from me before I jump?
No, we're good. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Peter. Thanks, Steve.
Okay,
Thanks, Lisa.
okay.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
everyone.
All right, so just to continue, I think Michael kind of touched on most of the items that we have. So just to go over the month-to-month change. So we have roughly approximately a 418 change month over month, driven by salaries. We have adjusted our anticipated spend for stipend, which is significant here, at about $26,000. We had an extended FMA leave, which is now being paid from our sick bank line. And the sick bank line is located in the benefits line, account number, I forgot, 2014, I believe. Yep, 2014 for the sick bank line. Benefits, as we mentioned, there's a change to the CMERS rate. I think we have changed the CMERS rate. We changed the CMERS rate twice in the budget during budget development. We ultimately settled at 19.57, which was the amount that we were informed of in March. And as I noted in the write-up, the state controller's office notified us that the plan has changed, or they're working on some plan changes, and they wanted to give immediate relief to the municipalities or to Board of Education, and the rate was reduced to 15.85. For our current budget, our upcoming budget, we have about a 17.86 or 17.26 employer contribution rate. We will know for certain in March what that rate is. Other services, the main drivers here had to do with SPED transportation. As I mentioned previously, we have a student who no longer requires transportation, and we're just releasing that cost, and we're pretty much truing up the overall transportation cost for SPED. In addition to that, and I think, Peter, you alluded to this, that last year, we had to spend additional funds for athletic transportation, and we did add additional monies to our budget this year in anticipation that would continue. We're releasing some of those funds right now for the first quarter or so through December. Luckily, First Student was able to provide that transportation. So we're sort of more than likely confident that we can release this for the $3,000. So those are really the main items contributing to the month-over-month change. I did outline in terms of the surplus what the main drivers are here. Just to, as Michael mentioned, these are Michael's question was, are these one-time drivers? And they are. We have salary savings for FML. We have the adjustment to our behavioral support, which we're using a third party to provide. I mentioned the adjustment in the census for health insurance, the CMERS we just talked about, and the other items that we have listed here were items that were previously discussed. Savings for insurance, transportation credits, reduced sped transportation, increase in pre-K and non-resident tuition, and anticipated increase in our Medicaid reimbursement. It's really, I mean, these numbers add up and they add up very quickly. So that's a 1.1% on the positive, which will be offset by $445,000 in terms of offset, which had to do with the salary for our security supervisor. And as previously mentioned, additional costs for professional services as it relates to our PPS department. So all in all, as of right now, we're looking at a surplus of approximately $657,000.
Okay. And are we going to request any of that be retained, or are we going to give it back to the general fund?
At this point, we have some one-off or some non-recurring costs that we will make a recommendation to mitigate or to reduce the budget for fiscal year 24-25.
Okay, great.
And in other items, it's just internal services fund. Internal services fund in chart is where we expect it to be.
Yeah.
For dental claims.
Yeah, that's great.
And that is it for the update.
So the technology lease, is that?
Technology lease.
Yeah.
So as you know, we have a plan pretty much to establish a fund for technology, which means that we have to have a leasing plan for 4 years. This would be year 2 of that plan. We discussed this and the amount was approved during the budget. So we went into RFP. We got bids, as you see in here, from 4 companies. The low in terms of overall cost and increase and interest rate is First American. First American is coming at a rate of 5.39%, with an annual payment of roughly $82,000, which is in line with the amount that we had in our current budget. And also to note, First American is also the provider or the funding source for the first year of our lease. So we are recommending that we award this lease to First American.
I don't know who First American is, but who are they?
They're just a financing company.
Okay, and they're solvent?
They're solid. Our first lease is also with them.
Okay. I only say that because I don't know who they are, but I do know. I also sit on the Connecticut Lottery Corporation board, and when you have big payouts, they're basically generally it's an annuity because people do it over time, and we do review who provides the annuities by their financial solvency. So I don't know if we should just kind of get an idea of what, we'd hate to have them go out of business in the middle of it. Not that I'm suggesting they are. I'm just not familiar with it. So it might just be good to see what kind of what their credit rating is.
Sure.
I can do that. It's fine with me, Peter. Is that okay? Do we need a vote on this, or what are we doing?
We will need a vote by the full board because this needs to go to the Board of Selectmen for approval.
Okay. It's good for me.
Okay. So
And I guess-
I'll get some information on that, and if it comes up in the meeting, we can address
Yeah,
it at
it'd
the
just be
board meeting
helpful.
next week.
And I guess the only other item on the agenda is to approve the minutes for our past meeting. Do I have a motion to approve the minutes?
I move to approve the December Financial Facilities and Operations Committee minutes.
Okay, and I'll second, and I'm in favor. You, Peter?
Favor, yes.
Is there anything else, Lisa, Mike, Phil?
We just have other business, right? I was going to interject one other business. Is that
Sure,
okay?
yeah.
So I'm waiting on the response from our resource at UConn on energy efficiency and an audit. And because Mike diligently working on his capital budget, and I'm trying to see if he'll be in the Fairfield County area sooner than later, and maybe he can sit down with us for an hour and go through a template that he's developed to sort of map out CapEx expenditures versus OpEx savings over time, just so we have a nice
Yeah.
evolving.
So, this definitely preceded you, Phil, and even you, Michael. At one point, Lisa, and you were a principal of one of the schools at the time, we had an energy efficiency expert on staff for a period of time.
Yeah, I can comment on that. So we had a position that he was the director of transportation, which, quite frankly, in a district this size, we don't really need a director of transportation, but the need was because at that point we were combining the routes, secondary and elementary, and so there was big stuff done and all that. That person, half of their job was energy efficiency.
Oh, okay.
So it was the same person. And so what that person would do is, in those days, we had tools for schools, indoor air quality. One of the tasks that person would do is things like, look at, obviously the energy costs, would report out with a chart. He would, go and do like, periodic checks, even like in the middle of the night. He would drive and check refrigerators and kitchens and lights being left on and all of that to really get people on board with, shutting off the lights, making sure that things are running properly with machines, getting rid of people's extra appliances that they shouldn't have, all of that. And over time, it went away.
But it's
The position. There was a lot of initiatives done with him kind of being the main person that was watching this. But then when he left, he was not replaced.
But that aspect of that individual's job was productive.
Yes.
Yeah.
I think that some strides were made with him. That being said, I also think that as far as with sustainability and shutting off lights and, getting rid of extra refrigerators and doing all that, like that's kind of where we're at right now.
Okay.
That doesn't mean to say there isn't another level of work perhaps that someone could do, but it's been, how many years since that individual left? Probably at least 5-6 years, correct?
Oh, I think probably more.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. Oh, yeah. Thinking
Yeah,
about
I just
it.
remember the conversation on the Board of Finance at the time.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
that's correct. There was somebody.
Anyway,
So what Michael and I are in essence doing is rejuvenating that maybe in some capacity, right? Part of it by looking at energy efficiency and trying to formalize it. Maybe looking forwards, we'll have to return back to a little more dedicated resource or a little more vigilance, right? But I think what Michael did in his budget and then my efforts here, it's good. We sort of brought it back because we probably have better technologies to work with. We have higher energy costs that are so just maybe we'll keep plugging away at it until it's more formalized.
how much of our energy is gas? Not gasoline, gas, natural gas.
We do use natural gas to heat the buildings.
Okay. Now, there's just an article day before yesterday in the Wall Street Journal about potential gas shortages on the East Coast.
Is it true that, not to go down a rabbit hole, there was a time prior in the budget that we had boilers that could, years ago it was, do we use gas this year or do you use oil? I think we got away from that because of the cost of gas and trying to be responsible. Correct, Mike?
Yeah, that's correct. We all, well, not anymore, but when I stepped in here in 2011, all boilers were dual fuel. Pre 2017, I believe, the strategy was as the underground storage tanks for oil expired, we replaced.
Right.
And then it was made post that we removed them. So at this point, we do have the capability of dual fuel at the elementary school for all 4 houses. We do have at the high school on the new side, on the addition side. We don't have dual fuel anymore at the middle school. So intermediate school is still dual fuel. So we've walked away from that. And yeah, I mean, it's 2 things with oil. The cost of it was astronomical. So it was just cheaper to run it on fuel. And then the maintenance to all the boilers and all the hot water heaters that were oil at the time was astronomical. And it's dirtier. It's worse for the environment. Things tend to fail quicker. So yeah, that was walked away from 8, 9 years ago or so.
Okay. Let's hope that everybody's warm this winter.
Agreed.
Okay. Anything else, Peter? Anybody?
No. Thank you. That's
Okay. So can I have a motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
I second that. Thank you, everybody.
Can we stay on? I can ask an unrelated question.